Today I'm joined by singer, songwriter, longtime artist, Foreign Forest, who has just recently dropped a new single, I'm Over It, to kind of add to a pretty massive catalog by this point. And I always like to establish a bit of a timeline with artists when interviewing them, but this time around, I want to focus on the consistency and timeline of the imagery that you've used in your music because for almost a decade now, you've incorporated imagery of kind of Halloween as sort of the main core of your music and your branding, most notably in the album Halloween All Year. So, what about those themes are important to your music, and how has the meaning of them changed over time with your artistic development?
Right. So I would say I've been using Halloween imagery since 2019. 2019, I made my first debut, I would say, album called Halloween But All Year, and I was born in October, so I think I kind of pulled influence from that. I've always been interested in horror movies. My favorite color is orange, so I was kind of like I was also thinking like as a musician, it's really hard to market yourself when people don't really have an image in their mind when they're listening to you. So I was like, what could be like something I could use? And I found that a pumpkin or a jack-o'-lantern was pretty fitting because it also had an emoji to go with it. So it's like with every text that I post, I could put a little emoji with it. And I found it pretty easy to fashion myself online with that type of theme. So back in 2019, I was making Halloween But All Year. At the time, I was living off of Melrose in Los Angeles with my friends Maxwell's, Cozy Boy, LaPlay,
Mm-hmm.
and we were in an apartment. You could see the Hollywood sign from there, and it was very much the type of thing that you do in your younger years when you're just like, I just want to feel like I'm somebody. And
Right.
so we all got an apartment together, and I had just got a brand new guitar. My friend Lund was coming over every like weekend to say hi. We used to in my first LA house, I lived with Lund, Maxwell's, and a couple other people. This was my second LA house, and so I was just kind of feeling like really free. All of my friends were doing the same thing as me. We're all just making music for a living, and I was kind of like, well, I've made tons of singles. I've been to label meetings for not myself, but for other artists, and I've kind of established an idea like, what do I want to make myself seem like? Which I guess I don't really think of that much anymore because I'm trying to be more authentic. But like back then, I was really just trying to like put an image out.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, Halloween. And so as the days progressed, I think in like 10 days, I made most of the songs for Halloween But All Year. First song of which being Carousel. Yeah, I would say that was the beginning of the timeline with the Halloween imagery. Going from there, I've kind of just tried to continue that. The main message going along with that came out of HBay was that we all wear a mask. We all like wear our personalities almost over our emotions, over our personality. The message behind that is just be your authentic self, say who you are, and take off the mask of inauthenticity, if that's a word, and
Yeah.
just be yourself.
I like that
Yeah.
you bring up kind of how you're viewing sort of branding and marketing and sort of like an image back when you're starting out, and then now that you've sort of developed a bit of a platform and a name for yourself, you're kind of more focused or less focused on that, more focused on sort of just presenting yourself authentically. You know, how much does marketing and branding and those kind of like more functional aspects of your work play into how you approach releasing music, or like you said, does not matter as much anymore?
I would say now, after having at least 200 and something songs out online, many more in the vault, I would say that my focus when it comes to branding is like, okay, make it at least true to yourself, make it at least visually exciting, but more importantly, make it come from the heart. And I would say that even I struggle with that sometimes, making things come from the heart. I'm always on a path of like trying to either be my most authentic self or trying to like have fun in the dreary times that life can throw at all of us. And like, I'm definitely not a perfect person. So I would say the marketing aspect of my music is second to the authenticity of it and trying to be vocal about how I feel. Yeah, that's the main point of my music now.
Awesome. And also another interesting point that you brought up is living in this house with other artists, all kind of focused on the same goals, working towards the same things, and kind of existing within the same social sphere. Um, at this point, how would you say that collaborating with these artists and working with the same kind of tightly knit group of people has influenced your work and impacted it going forward? How did that affect your artistic trajectory?
I would say every time I see someone, I can see a little piece of myself in them. You know, like the things that if I talk to them, the things that they're shooting for, I can kind of relate to them in a way, and also kind of not relate to them in a way. My one of my main influences and best friends, Lund,
Yeah.
him being such a big artist, but also being quite anonymous, that's definitely been an inspiration for me. And then I see other people that are really putting themselves out. I have a couple of friends that are like, you need to be making more TikToks, you need to be putting your face out there, you need to
Yeah.
be doing this, that, and the other. Whereas I have other influences that are just like, be yourself, put yourself out there, and the right people will connect. And so I think that's more along the lines of where I gravitate towards.
Yeah. And just kind of branching off once again, you've been making music for over a decade now. And you've built up a discography of multiple albums, hundreds of songs, and as we just discussed, plenty of collaborations as well. How do you like maintain momentum with your work, and what keeps making music interesting and fun for you to continue to do, to continue to experiment with?
It's definitely hard to keep momentum, especially when you're trying to be authentic, because at certain points you've said all that you can say in a moment of time.
Right.
And you're like, what can I say that hasn't been said by me? And I would say that sometimes when I can't write songs for myself, I put myself into the shoes of others and I see what they're going through. Everyone's got some type of emotional turmoil inside of them going on. And
Yeah.
when I'm not feeling my own, and when I'm feeling really balanced, sometimes I write songs that are just not as good as when I'm in my bag per se. So I put myself into the shoes of others, and it helps me write certain songs. And yeah,
Just something to keep the gears turning, something else to pull from. Um,
yeah, I would say that it's like important if you care about, I would say this is my career. So if it's important, if you want to make a career out of this, to figure out what you want to say, and it's important to figure out how to keep people entertained,
yeah.
but also how to be authentic.
Yeah, kind
So
of balancing those two things at the same time. Because, like you said, at this point, like this is your career. You've put so much into this, and it has given you a lot back.
and I'm super grateful,
Yeah,
super
yeah.
grateful.
And most presently, you've just dropped your new single, "I'm Over It." So kind of just focusing in on that immediate moment, because you like literally just dropped it, yesterday. Um,
Mhm.
so what does that song mean to you? And how has the initial reception to it been?
That song I wrote when I was leaving a dead end job as a graphic designer. I just wasn't feeling very appreciated, though I felt like I was really on point and really good at my job. And I think a lot of us can relate to that, being in positions where people just don't value us, whether it's in a job or a relationship or friendship. And you kind of just want to say, like, you know what, I'm over it. And if you guys don't feel me, like, I'm going to value myself and go do my own thing. That was
Absolutely.
the mindset behind that song.
Yeah. And how has the reception been? People seem to be really enjoying it a lot. Is that kind of like leveling up to what you expected?
Yeah, I would say so. I would say that I never try to shoot my expectations too high nowadays. I kind of just want to put it out into the universe and kind of like a feeler, see how people respond to it. I would say like that. And my last song, What If I Was Dead, really came from a place out where I was just feeling unappreciated, and I really wanted to see how people would feel if I wasn't there anymore.
Yeah.
And I'm super grateful that I'm not the only one in the world that feels like that. It makes me feel less alone.
Yeah, and the reason I bring it up is because I've been talking to a lot of artists recently about work that they've done that has kind of gone undernoticed or underappreciated relative to maybe some more successful tracks. So for you and your music over the years, is there any ideas, lyrics, or even entire songs that you were particularly proud of that you kind of wished more people would have noticed?
Not really any that comes to mind. I would say that any artist puts stuff out, and like certain times that the world just doesn't resonate with them. And I like to think it's for a reason. So that's why I always try to like, I have hundreds of songs out. So certain ones that don't hit, like, I often think maybe it's just I wasn't in the right mind state. Maybe I was in a more vain mind state, making it for the wrong reasons. And
Right.
the ones that matter stay and make a difference.
Yeah, I think it's cool to kind of to recognize it that way, sort of like a reflection and almost self-regulation of your own body of work. That's an interesting way
Right.
to look at it. And So kind of moving on to the subject of your music, the sound and style and aesthetic, I think it's fair to say that a lot of people would categorize a bulk of your music under the sort of emo umbrella in its various terms and inspirations. But maybe straying away from genre definitions for a bit, how would you yourself classify and describe your music? You know, what are the core sort of consistent aspects of what you're making?
That's a good question. I would say every time someone asks me like, "Hey, what kind of music do you make?" It's always hard to answer
It's a
because I
weird
listen to all
question.
types of right. I listen to all types of music. I make all types of music. I have a couple other aliases. Like I have another alias called Jack O'Lantern,
Hmm.
and I put ambient music out under that. So I've kind of figured out that this fan base under Foreign Forest really responds to the emotional, but more importantly, lyrical stuff that I drop. So I would say that emo rap is definitely one of them. Alternative is one that I always put myself under, and hip hop and rap I would say
Yeah.
are my three main ones. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's cool that you bring up the ambient project as well, because I think sort of branching off and exploring different avenues of your creativity always kind of helps, keeps things fresh, keeps keeps things exciting in a way. And so actually
Right.
departing from music completely, I know that you released a book in 2023, titled "Imagine Anywhere," which I thought was really
Hmm.
cool. I didn't know that until I kind of started doing research on you a little bit. So, how was
Right.
the process of writing that book, and what kind of made you want to venture into the creative territory of writing essentially, young adult fiction, writing a book instead of making music?
Well, to start with, like how I ended up doing that, I just kind of didn't want to put myself into a box. I like to think of myself as like a multifaceted person.
Yeah,
You know, they say a jack of all trades is a master of none, but and when I think of that, like I would still rather be a jack of all trades.
sure.
So because I don't really care to be a master in anything, so I would say so what started that process was I read a lot of books like Harry Potter, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, Lemony Snicket's series of
Yeah.
unfortunate events. So I went to Barnes and Noble with my wife, and when I wasn't buying a book, we were buying a coffee and just sitting there, and I was writing on my laptop. Sometimes we'd go to Starbucks. I remember like the most annoying parts was just like how loud people were, but also it was pretty interesting because we get to hear like, oh, this person's, you got a little sight into other people's lives, and I got to take pieces of that and put that into the book. So
Nice.
that was pretty cool. Imagine Anywhere. I guess the theme behind it is that a couple kids find this table, and the table, when you put a book on it, it sends you into the books, and you get to. It was like you read my book, and you get to watch these kids go into these other books. There's a lot more to it. I'll let you figure that out if you want to. I'll send you a copy if you want.
Dude, I would
When I see you on
love
tour, I'll bring you one.
I would love a copy of Imagine Anywhere.
Yeah, I got you, bro. Got
But no, I think that's so cool. I don't know. I think it's important to kind of. I don't think it's necessary, but I do think it's a lot of fun when people kind of branch out and do things that maybe wouldn't be expected of them. You know, if you're making music under Foreign Forest for 7, 8, 9
you. Yeah.
years, doing a book is a kind of a sort of a curveball, and I think it's really interesting. Um,
Yeah.
and a couple more questions for you. You bring up the tour, which we are doing together. The upcoming Wish You Would Stay tour near the
I'm
close of
excited
it.
for that. Yeah.
I'm very excited for it, and so I did have some questions kind of related to live performances for you. The
Sure.
first being, what are some go-to songs that you have for live performances, and kind of what makes them your favorites to perform?
Well, If I Die Baby has to be on every set. I'm trying to have three different sets for the three nights that we're going to be doing it, but I know that that is my biggest song and people really resonate with that.
Absolutely.
So that's a for sure one. And then I say, honestly, everything after that is kind of just up to my own preference. Like having so many songs, I kind of want to just paint each night differently. So
Yeah.
to put it simply, yeah.
Awesome. And I've you've been performing for a little bit. You've done a couple shows. How has your approach to that setting and to kind of like that form of entertainment changed, if at all, since you first started doing it?
Well, like any developing artist, I started opening up for people, doing open mic nights and things like that. As time progressed, I was just put on different bills, and I found myself getting a lot more comfortable. There's no show that I do where I'm not a little bit nervous before the show and like, probably have to go take a dump or something before I hop on
Sure.
stage.
Yeah. Something to release the tension.
Yeah. But I think nowadays I'm just like so excited to connect with people that have been through the same things in life that I have.
Yeah.
I go through a lot of my days just not finding people like that. So to have something that connects me with them, like my music, is something that's super valuable to me.
Awesome, yeah. And I've got just two more questions for you. One of them being, I talk to a lot of artists that
Mhm.
either have expressed to me things that they wish they knew when they were starting out music, or I honestly I talk to a lot of artists that are kind of still within that new territory of not having made music for a long time. So if there was anything that you could tell, 20, 18 Foreign Forest or even earlier, what would that, sort of like information you bestowed upon yourself, what would that be?
I guess it would be to ask yourself how you feel and not just about like how you think others want you to feel.
Right.
And from the jump, I probably would have made a lot less music and a lot more authentic music.
Hmm.
But also, I wouldn't go back and I wouldn't change anything, honestly. I think that we all develop at our own rate. And if I could give any advice to like universally all artists, it would be just find what makes making music fun to you and stick with it.
Hell yeah. And then finally, to kind of close things out, just I would like to just kind of get your insight on some short and then also long term goals of yours. I know that you've been doing this for quite a while,
Okay.
and I know that you've crossed a lot of milestones already. So whether it be next week or 5 years from now, what are you just kind of hoping to accomplish? Not even in music, but just in anything in life.
I'm definitely into sustainability. I'm into looking at how to go off grid. I'm looking at how to be just more independent. So probably get a farm and make music in my spare time and live off of the land. Like of Mice and Men, I want to live off the land.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, that's definitely one of my main goals. Probably to make some more music that describes that whole process. I like to say that my music, every song is like a portal, so that every time I go back and listen to it, I jump through that portal to that moment in time. So just to create more portals
Yeah.
for myself and for others.
That is a really cool goal. Honestly, I kind of want to know like what's attractive to you about like off grid, kind of like sort of detached rural living. I think that's a really cool goal, and honestly, I'd love to get to know why that's like appealing.
I think because it just teaches me more about myself and more about the powers within that I can unleash.
Yeah,
There's just so much that conventional civilization has pulled us away from, like learning how to grow your own food and learning how to process herbs and make medicine out of them, and just the whole like pharmaceutical industry, like the power industry, all of it is just is so corrupt, and people trying to get on top of one another and control everybody. Like I just want to get away from all of that and
absolutely.
just learn how I can help myself and help other people and teach them how to.
Well, that is really cool. That's a great perspective, and honestly, like I totally get it. I think that is a very admirable goal. So with that in mind, that about closes up everything that I've got to ask for you there. Thank you so much for your
Awesome.
time.
Thank you for having me, man.
Yeah, of course.